We continue now at the top of Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph in Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 83a. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought the opinion of Rabbi Meir that if a person is transporting barrels from one place to another place, whether he's a shomer chinam, whether he's a shomer sacher, he's able to take an oath that it was not pshia, that it was not negligence, and he will be pater. And the Gemara also brought the Braisa, which had the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer said the tradition is in fact like Rabbi Meir. However, it's surprising that that should be the halacha. And the Gemara is in the middle of explaining the various problems with Rabbi Meir, and the Gemara, as it goes on, it's actually going to repeat some of these problems, so we don't have to review them from the previous Amud. In any case, the Gemara continues, Va'afilu b'makom madro nami, even in a situation where it is an area where it's a slanted area, Hateina checha deleka raya, so it all makes sense. You can say, if there's no evidence, if he can't prove what happened, so then it makes sense that he can take an oath and he can be pater. Aval hecha dika raya, but if it's a situation where he can bring evidence, so nesi raya v'nifter, he should have to bring evidence and be pater. It shouldn't be enough just to take an oath, meaning even if it's an area which is a slanted area, so we can say it's not negligence, but even over there, if it's an area where there are Eidim, you should have to bring Eidim. It should not be sufficient to simply take a shvua. And so that's another problem with what Rabbi Meir is saying. Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Isi ben Yehuda Omer, Isi ben Yehuda says, Ein roa shvuas Hashem tiyeh ben shneim. It says, no one saw, and then there's an oath. Hayesh roa yavi raya v'yifter. So it sounds like Isi ben Yehuda saying, it sounds like from the pasuk, if there is someone who saw, if there is evidence, you have to bring the evidence and be pater. It is not enough to take an oath. And Rashi explains, Va'afilu b'makom madro nami, even in a situation where it's a slanted area, heich nifter b'shvua, how can he exempt himself with an oath? B'makom shebnei adam regilan lahalach, in a place where people generally walk, elim kein mevi edim, in such a situation, he should have to bring those witnesses. Heich de'ika raya, if you have proof, meaning b'makom she'edim mitzuyin, if it's a place where there are witnesses around, naisi raya, he should have to bring that proof. Lo yifter b'shvua, he shouldn't exempt himself with an oath. Ki isi, if we're following isi. And so the Gemara never defends Rabbi Meir, but Rashi explains how Rabbi Meir will defend himself. For Rabbi Meir Islay, Rabbi Meir himself, he holds niskal onesu, that actually when somebody stumbles, that's considered an onus. Hilkach shomer sacher nami pater. That's why a shomer sacher would be exempt. One of the questions on Rabbi Meir was, why should a shomer sacher be exempt? A shomer sacher is chayiv in geneva v'aveda. You'll have to say that Rabbi Meir holds niskal, when a person stumbles, it's not in the category of geneva v'aveda, it's in the category of onus. So even a shomer sacher is pater. And you'll also have to say the Isi Leslie. You're going to have to say that Rabbi Meir does not agree with what Isi ben Yehuda says. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, and we'll take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Hachi Garsinan, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Velo Garsinan Ella. Do not have in the Gemara the text of the word Ella. Ella would be mashma, rather would be mashma that we're going back and revising something. But Umilsa biape nafshe. Rashi says, this is actually a statement on its own. Mitaretz hadra minan la'el de Rabbi Meir ad Rabbi Meir ben Niskal. We had a contradiction on the previous Amud in terms of whether Niskal, when somebody stumbles, is that considered negligence or not. V'yamar Rabbi Elazar tavra v'chulu. And on the previous Amud, Rabbi Elazar said there are two traditions within Rabbi Meir, whether Niskal is posheya or Niskal lav posheya. Rabbi Chia bar Abba poligad Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Chia bar Abba here is arguing on Rabbi Elazar. V'yamar, and he's saying li'olam chad tanu, that really it's all one tradition, one tana of Rabbi Meir. V'niskal vaday posheya, and certainly if a person stumbles, that is considered to be negligence. Then the question is, in our case, when the person is transporting the barrels, why does he exempt himself with a shvua? How can he exempt himself with a shvua if he was certainly negligent? And so, over here, the reason why he exempts himself with the shvua, as we're going to see in a moment, again, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chia bar Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, shvua zu takonas chachamim. The shvua here that he's taking to exempt himself is an institution from the chachamim. It's a takonas chachamim. Shemi'iyata omer ken, because if you didn't say this, if you didn't allow him to take a shvua to get out of this, ein loch adam hamavir chavis lechaveiro mimakom lemakom. The person is not going to, no person would ever transport a barrel for his friend from one place to the other. They'd always be afraid that maybe they're going to stumble or something like that. And so we have to institute, it has to be a takonas chachamim, that they can get out of it with a shvua. They don't have to be obligated. And the Gemara says, hechem ishtaba. Well, what exactly is the shvua? You can't say that you weren't negligent if you were negligent. So what's the nature of the oath? Amar Rava says, shvua shalo bekavana shivartia. The shvua that he takes is, he takes an oath that I didn't do this with intention. It wasn't intentional that I broke it. That's going to be the shvua. And the Gemara continues within this interpretation of the Braisa of Yasser Rabbi Yehuda L'meimer. Then Rabbi Yehuda, he comes and says, Shomer Chinam Yeshava, that a Shomer Chinam, indeed, he's able to take a shvua and be pater, but no say Sachar Yeshalim, a Shomer Sachar should have to pay. Hai Kadina v'Hai Kadina, each one according to Zalacha, meaning essentially Rabbi Yehuda says what happened over here is in the category of Geneva v'Aveda, and that's why a Shomer Sachar is going to be Chayiv. And Rashi explains, V'yos Rabbi Yehuda leflugeu l'meimar niskal lav poshehu. Rabbi Yehuda comes and argues and says that niskal is actually not negligence, ela korov la'ones v'lepshia. It's close to accident, but also close to negligence, meaning it's in the middle. V'dami l'gneva v'yaveda. It's similar to gneva v'yaveda. That's why Shomer Sachar is chayiv. V'taikonis chacham inkan. He says there is no taikonis chacham here. Ela haikidina v'haikidina. You just follow the regular halacha. Shomer chinam is only responsible for negligence, so he can get out of it over here. But a Shomer Sachar who is responsible for gneva v'yaveda, he is going to be obligated in this situation. V'yasar Rebbe Lazar l'meimer, and then Rebbe Lazar, he comes and says, and again, this is the repeat essentially of what we said the previous Amud with Rebbe Lazar's argument. Rebbe Lazar comes and says, in yes, Gemara Rabbi Meir, the tradition is like Rabbi Meir, that both of them can exempt themselves with a shvua. Umiyu tamiya ani im yecholim zev v'zel lishava, but it surprises me that they should both be able to take a shvua and be exempt. B'shalom shomer chinam mishtaba shalopashav, I understand a shomer chinam, he can get out of it because he can take an oath that there was no negligence. Ela shomer sachar amai mishtaba, but a shomer sachar, why is he able to take an oath? Kilo pasha nami boy shalume, a shomer sachar needs to pay even in situations where it's not negligent. V'afilu shomer chinam nami, and even by shomer chinam, hateinach b'makom madron, I understand if it's an area that he's walking that's slanted, that can be a situation where we can say in such a situation it's not negligence. Shalo b'makom madron mimatzi mishtaba shalo pasha, but in a place where it's not even slanted, can he really take an oath it wasn't negligence? Certainly it's negligence. And even in a place where it's slanted, that all works out in a situation where there's no evidence, like we said above, but if it's an area where there's evidence, if there are witnesses, he should have to bring the evidence in order to be pater. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Isi ben Yehuda Omer, Isi ben Yehuda says, Ein roa shvus Hashem tiyeh ben shneim. It's as if no one saw, then the oath is taken. Hayeshra, but if somebody saw, Yavi raya v'yifter, he should have to bring the evidence in order to be pater. And the Gemara continues, there was a person who was transporting barrels of wine in the streets of Mechuzah, and it broke in one of the protrusions by the streets over there in Mechuzah. Ravi came before Rav Amar Lei, said to him, in the marketplace, in the streets of Mechuzah, there's a lot of people, Zil Aisiraya, you have to bring evidence of what happened in order to be pater. Amar Lei Rav Yosef Berei, Rav Yosef's son said to him, Keman, who are you following? Ki isi, are you following isi, like we said above, that if there's evidence, you have to bring evidence. Amar Lei, he said, in yes, ki isi, I am following isi, usvira lan kavase, we hold like him. And the Gemara continues, how Gavra Damarle Lachavre, there was a person who said to his friend, Zil Zavanli Arba Mea Doni Chamra, go and buy for me 400 jugs of wine. Azal Zavanle, he went and he bought it for him. Lasof Asal Kameh, in the end he came before him. Amarle, he said to him, Zvini Lach Arba Mea Doni Chamra, I bought for you 400 jugs of wine, Utakifuluhu, and they soured. Asal Kameh de Rav, he came before Rav. Amarle said to him, Arba Mea Doni Chamra Takifi, if you have 400 jugs of wine that fermented, that soured, Kala Isla Lamilsa, there's publicity about that, people know about that. Zil Aisi Rai, you have to go bring a proof to make Karakim Izavnes Lu, that originally, when you bought them, Chamra Mal Yahav, that it was good wine, Ve'iftar, and then you will be pater. Amar Le Rav Yosef, Berei Rav Yosef, his son, said to him, Keman, who are you following? Ki Isi, are you following Isi? Amar Le said to him, in yes, Ki Isi, I'm following Isi, Usvirulon Kivase, and we hold like him. And the Gemara continues, asking Rav Chia bar Yosef b'Sichra. Rav Chia bar Yosef, he made a takana in Sichra. Hani dedaru ba'agra v'itvar. If people are carrying with an agra is a kind of pole where you have packages in the front and the back of the person. The pole is over the shoulder. So if a person is carrying with that and it breaks, neshalim palga, then the person should pay half. My time, what's the reason? In nafish l'chad v'zuta l'trei, because the amount that's being carried in that situation, it's a little bit too much for one person, but a little bit too little for two people. So therefore, it's karav la'ones v'karav l'pshia. It's kind of close to an accident, but also close to negligence, and therefore we split the difference, and he pays half. Bedigla, if he's carrying with a pole called a digla, and that kind of pole, it's essentially across the shoulders, whether you have burdens to the right and to the left of the person, it's across the person's body in that fashion. So they're mashalim kula, so there already the person should pay the entire thing, because really such a burden should be carried by two people and not by one person. And the Gemara continues, Rabba Barbar Chanan, Tavru Lehanu Shkuloi Chavisa Dechamra. Rabba Barbar Chanan, some have the gears of Rabba Barbar Chana, some have the gears of Rabba Bar Rav Huna. In any case, some porters who were carrying barrels of wine, they broke the barrel of wine. Shagal Iglimayu, so he took their shirts to compensate. Asu Amr Rav, so they came and they told Rav what happened. Amar Lei said to him, Havlu Gulimayo, give them back their shirts. Amar Lei said to him, Dina Hachi, is that really the law? Don't they have to pay for the broken barrels? Amar Lei said to him, yes, that is the halacha. It's actually essentially lifnim mishuras hadin. You should go beyond the letter of the law, as the pasuk says, Laman telech b'derech tovim. You have to go in the path of the good. Yavlu Gulimayo, so he gave them back their shirts. Amru Lei, then they said to him, Ani ayanon, we're poor. V'tarchinon kula yoma, we work the entire day. V'chafinon v'leslan midi, and we're hungry and we don't have anything. Amar Lei said to him, Zil havigraya, you should give them their wages as well. Amar Lei said to him, Dina Hachi, is that really the law? I have to pay wages when they didn't really do the job. Amar Lei said to him, yes, v'orchos tzadikim tishmor. Again, that's a continuation of the same pasuk, same idea. You should go lifnim and mishuras hadin, go beyond the letter of the law. Hadron Allah hasocher eso umnin. We will return to you, parak hasocher eso umnin. This is the end of the 6th parak of Meseches Bava Metzia. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will now begin the 7th parak of Meseches Bava Metzia. And the parak begins with the Mishnah, Hasocher Asapoalim, if one hires workers, V'yamar Lahem, he says to them, Lahashkim Ulaharev, to wake up early in the morning and stay late at night doing the work. Mokum Shenoagu Shalo Lahashkim V'Shalo Laharev, if it's a place where the custom is not to get up early and not to stay late working, Eino Rashai Lechof, and he's not able to force them to do so. Mokum Shenagu Lazon Yazon, in a place where the minig is that he provides them food, he should provide the workers food. Lasapik B'Mesika, if the minig is to supply them with sweet foods, Yasapik, he should supply them with that. Hakol Kaminig Medina, everything should follow the custom of the area where they are. Ma'aseh Rav Yochanan ben Masya, there was an incident with Rav Yochanan ben Masya, Sha'amar Livno, he said to his son, say, Sechor lanu po'al, and go and hire for us workers. Halach, upasak lehem mizonos, he went and he said he would provide food. Ucheshaboy etzel aviv, when he came to his father, Amar lo, his father said to him, Beni, my son, afilu imata osa lehem kesudas Shlomo b'shaito, even if you made a meal for them like the meal of Shlomo HaMelech during his time, during his reign, lo yotzas yedei chovascha, you still would not fulfill your obligation, imoin, you wouldn't fulfill your obligation with them. Shein b'nei Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yakov, because they're the children of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Ela'ad shelo yaschila b'malacha, rather, before they start working, tzei ve'emor lahem, go and say to them, Almanas she'ein lachem alai, elapas v'kidnius bilvad, say that the condition is that the only claim they have against me, the claim they essentially they have against you, is the bread and the legumes. That's all we will provide them. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Lo hayatzarach lomar, he doesn't need to say this, because hakol kaminig hamedina, everything follows the custom of the area. The custom of the area was to provide with bread and legumes. That does not need to be stated. And Rashi explains, B'shaitu, it said Shlomo HaMelech in his time. It means Be'es Malchusu. It means in his time when he was the king. The Melech V'ed Yerhaveh, there was a time he was king, there was a time he wasn't king, and so therefore we're saying the Su'udah of Shlomo when he was king. But that's not sufficient. Shehem B'nei Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yakov, because these are children of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. V'Su'udaso Shel Avraham, Gedol Mishal Shlomo, the meal of Avraham was greater than the meal of Shlomo. Kedem Mefarish B'Gemara, as the Gemara will explain. Ad Shelo Yischilu B'Melacha, let them know about this before they start working. The ain kind of dvarim, because at that point in time it's just a promise of words. With dvarim ain bahem mishum mechusrei amon. If you don't keep to that word, that's not considered problematic. It's not something that's binding. Now, if they had already started to work, then already you cannot retract. And the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't it obvious that the employer is not able to force them to wake up early and stay late? And the Gemara says, Lo no tzrich, it's necessary. The tafalu agrai, we're talking about a case where he pays them more than the average worker. Ma'u detema, what might you have said? Amar lahu, ha detafoi lechu, he can say to them, the reason why I added agraichu, the reason why I added to your pay, is adaita de mekadmisu mechashchisu b'hadoy, it's on the understanding you'll wake up early and you'll stay late working for me. Kamash malon, so that's what the Mishnah is teaching us, da amrulei, that they can say back to him, hi the the reason why you gave us more, it's really on the understanding that we do better work in terms of the quality of the work. And the Gemara continues, Reish Lakish says, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video, on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis.